Welcome to the Kumble Corner, the Indian cricket show, fresh from a fantastic Border-Gavaskar trophy, where India have saved themselves from another final loss and also probably saved cricket as well, or saved Test cricket, to say the least. Super Joshi here, joined by Nakul Pandey and fresh from Australia, Karan Mehta, who is not to blame for anything at the MCG, apart from maybe Bumrah's brilliant performance. That was him cheering him on. Two of our colleagues, Karthik Krishnaswamy and Mr. Bandyopadhyay, have decided to opt to rest for this episode. I don't know where they got that idea from. If you are checking this out on any socials, Kumble Corner with 2Ks, of course, and thank you, of course, for liking and subscribing and following this wherever you are getting the podcast. Gentlemen, where do we start with? Do we start with our captain resting? Do we start with this being a reverse of last time where the captain was away for the first game, which India lost, and then, or India won in this case, and then came back, whereas last time it was the other way around? Or do we just wallow?
I think the first thing to say...
Congratulations, South Africa. Which one do you want to say?
The first thing to say is that Karthik and Arithankar had a look at the pitch and decided to sit themselves out.
Yeah, it's what they did.
It's a testament, I think, to India into the series that actually there still was some hope. There was still a more than dumb and dumber chance of India pulling something off on that final day, on that third day, even when Jasprit Bumrah, it became clear, was not going to be able to bowl. There was still some tension in it right up until the last sort of 80 runs or so. Kind of looked at from a slightly bigger standpoint, it was a cracking series. It had some outstanding bowling, a few bits of outstanding batting in a very tough series, some all-timer catches, debutantes, ends of careers, some debutantes who probably ended their career, some diplomatic incidents. It was and including only one of Border and Gavaskar being able to present the Border-Gavaskar trophy at the end. So we're I think we hit the bingo card.
It would have been an absolute burglary if India had got a draw out of that series at the end, but a lot of Aussies were kind of worried about that. It would have been hilarious, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's where we are. That was probably why it hurt so much. Actually, is that there was still some hope. It wasn't just going to be the complete just failure that I think perhaps there was some expectation of. And Australia were up for this. We knew this. Some of these players, or many of these players, I think don't know what it feels like to win a series against India. Right? Is that fair to say? It's 9 years since they won the Border-Gavaskar.
Yeah, last time was 14-15 when
that's a few hundred years ago.
Yeah, Mahendra Singh Dhoni was India's captain at the start of that.
No, you said 14-15. That's what. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Not 2015. Right, we're going to ignore my bad jokes. My dad jokes.
Nice.
Sorry, carry on.
Very, very good. But Michael Clarke and Mahendra Singh Dhoni were captain at the start of that series. The only Australian players in the squad still from that time. Josh Hazlewood, Nathan Lyon, Mitch Marsh, Steve Smith, and Mitchell Starc were around during that series at the time. So yeah, there's a significant number of and a few of those didn't survive the rest of the series. Like Mitch Marsh ended up missing a good chunk of that series.
And this one, well, a bit of it.
Yeah, indeed. The latest end to the career, to the Test career of Mitchell Marsh, and so there was a hunger, there was a desire for sure. There was certainly post Perth there was a kind of relentlessness and a positivity, and there was a lot of talk after that Perth Test match that Australia had got their preparation wrong and they had come in undercooked, and that why are you worried about getting to the end of the series, worry about the start of the series. And the team is over the hill, the team is falling apart. This is not just a defeat, but a team shattering defeat, and real serious people whose opinions we take seriously were saying this as well.
Yeah.
And all of those narratives get flipped over the next four tests.
Mostly because of stupid, handsome Cummins, but
for sure, and stupid, sexy Travis Head, and all of these things, and the inevitable Scott Boland.
Yeah, don't even get me started on Boland. As soon as Hazelwood was out, I was really upset. I thought Boland is just, we don't need Boland.
Yeah, Virat Kohli definitely did not need Scott Boland. That is a bowler put together in a lab to try and expose the weaknesses of late career Virat Kohli, who has kind of reverted to early career Virat Kohli. This tour reminded me a lot of when India came to England in 2014. And you look at a supercut of the dismissals, and they're very, very similar. We'll get onto the individual players in a second, but India should have got away with a draw from the MCG. Mm-hmm. Really, they had chances earlier in the series as well. The Adelaide Test
that was a write-off. I think Australia's record is probably just too good.
I'd say. But there were, India got themselves somewhat in that game a little bit after a poor start, and then threw it away again. And there were this kind of wild and wildly fast moving Sydney Test match. There kind of almost wasn't enough time for chances to come and throwing away. It was kind of, it's more like who can hang on to the banana boat the longest.
They when I go home.
And in the end, it's India bobbing around with their life jackets up around their ears, and Australia enjoying a few tinnies in the beach bar.
Yeah, you mentioned the MCG, so Goran, I think that's a good time to bring you in, because you were there in Melbourne for the Boxing Day Test. I mean, how was it as an experience generally, and also obviously the match as well, and maybe were there things that perhaps we TV missed you saw?
We're just well run out away from winning the series 3-1, so that's the part that kills me, because I think if we win that one, we smash them through Sydney. Fortunately, I'll never have to defend that point. So in the core of my heart, I can go to sleep knowing that we were run out away from winning the series. The experience was great. Watching cricket in Australia, is a really fun experience. They're always partying. Our music, the Bharat Army's music, is always countermatched with the Australian music, without the annoying trombone that comes, or the trumpet that comes with the Barmy Army.
That sounds like the worst walkabout ever. In London, in the UK, there's this bar called Walkabout, which is quite heavily Australian normally, and it's not for a music connoisseur, should we say? It's just quite pop generally. And what you described sounds like a bit of a nightmare. Sorry, I had to interject. Go on, Dawes and kangaroo sounds.
It's fun when the match is competitive, but there was a point where Bay 13, I think they're like notorious for their antics and their behavior and their chants and everything, which seemingly took it a bit far. But I'm sure there was Indian fans in the section that weren't saying the most pleasant of things. But the experience was spectacular. I honestly think the crowd the first day was 50-50, and then every day after that was probably Indian favored, Indian heavy, which I think probably also lit a fire underneath Australia, because it felt like it was a home match for us, honestly. The atmosphere, the momentum, the cheers for a wicket or a non-wicket, or some bullshit ruling that the umpire is going to pull out for his benefit, or for Australia's benefit, which makes sense as the home team. But yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
And is Melbourne quite an Indian city?
It seemed like it. I mean, I was basically on a business trip. I would wake up, have breakfast, walk to the match, walk back, have dinner, run it back. So from my experience, yeah, it was predominantly Indian. Walking into the ground was very Indian. Day 5, I thought, was probably back to 50-50. But I think that's primarily because Australians knew that, barring catastrophe, it was basically their match to win going into day 5.
What you just said there about the home game, I think before there was some noise anyway. People were said, "Yeah, the MCG is going to be an away game," but particularly in the UK, I think there was some kind of final of some sorts, and it was heavily Indian, and the England team were like, "Hold on, we need to quiet this crowd. This is ridiculous. This is England, and we're kind of outnumbered and getting booed." So, and that's going to happen more and more. I think was it just Miller who said that?
I remember being at the India-Australia World Cup semi-final in Sydney in 2015, and stewards and officials were handing out Australian flags to Australian members of the crowd to try and make it look like there were more Australians than there were in the ground.
Yeah, there was one point where I was sitting next to this really nice Australian family, and like their 3 younger boys, and a Star Sports reporter came up because we were sitting like first and second row. And a Star Sports reporter comes up. They're like, "Hey, is anyone here cheering for Australia? Or is anyone here from Australia?" And this like gentleman raises his hand. He's like, "Yeah, we are." And she's like, "But are you actually cheering for Australia?" And then they're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh." And then she like waves over the camera. And she's like, "Perfect, we caught one." Yeah, I mean the match itself. If you're a neutral supporter, the match is a blast. I think there was within the 5 days probably 3 times where each team felt like they were in the driver's seat. The betting odds probably flipped just as frequently. But it was just the end of day 2 where we lost those 3 wickets in like 30 minutes with Paul and Virat. And then the end of day 4 where we couldn't get Lyon and Boland out quick enough that we sort of just let a match slip away. And that's the disappointing part.
Is Cummins as handsome in real life?
Gorgeous. He's so beautiful. Even like during the 5th match, watching it at home, my girlfriend like pointed him out. I was like, "Yeah, we all know it. You're not breaking any sort of news here." Yeah, and he's really good. He's not as hateable as the other players. Like you want to get behind him. He's extremely compassionate, understands, like doesn't let the moment ever get too big for him. Even like you can see the media try to bait him, like, "Oh, what do you think about Virat's antics when he did this, this, and this?" He's like, well, that's just who he is. It's a part of the game. We love him for what he brought to Test cricket. We're just happy that we won this series as a team." Which, like, fuck him.
Yeah,
you can't hate him for that.
It's really annoying that there's an Australian captain we can't really hate. It's what's the world coming to?
Yeah, I know. And then they counteract with just Steve Smith being basically around the circle. He seemed like the pseudo vice captain. I don't know if he was vice captain, but
I think he's going to be the captain in Sri Lanka or something. I heard some rumors, so maybe potentially we'll come back to that. We'll verify that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this all intents and purposes, this like Constance is going to be hated quickly. I think, but he fits the mold of like a Stuart Broad and a Virat, like skills and all of that aside. But it's the perfect guy you want on your team, and he's the perfect villain if he's not on your team. And you can just tell that he grew up and his favorite player is Virat with the way he interacts, the way he bats, the way he doesn't back down. And then some of that stupid shit that he does when he's young, where he riles up Bumrah and screws over Khwaja, who I guess he could have played that ball better. But
do you say that because you've seen the clip of him saying he'd like to beat Virat, or was that just like something?
Oh, he said it twice. He even said it after his first innings.
All right, fine.
After he scored a 60, they're like, "So Virat's like your favorite player ever. What do you think about that shoulder bump?" He's like, "Yeah, he is my favorite player ever." I was like, "All right."
I got to touch him.
Yeah, God. That's what I said. My girlfriend was like, "What do you think? What would you do if Virat shoulder bumped you in the street?" I think I'd just hug him and start weeping.
I think I'd tell him I'm pregnant.
Didn't Kohli, Sam Constance's family were at a New Year's do the Australian Prime Minister held, and Kohli was taking photos with Constance's family.
Yep, Kohli and Bumrah were the 2 individual Indians that their whole families took photos with.
Punjabi supremacy. Cough, cough. Anyway, yes, white line fever. But we've known this, and this brings me back to that famous episode, Karan, where I said to you about Broad being like Kohli, whereas people, from what I'd heard, liked him off the pitch. So yeah, Kohli's famous for being a nice guy off it. I think AB's told stories of where he complimented Kohli's shoes, and the next day there was a box for him, and he's just a big.
Well, that narrative seemed to shift during this series because of the whole airport incident, which
by AB I don't mean Border, I mean De Villiers.
That's what I assume so. But
Yeah.
I mean, the narrative around Virat was a lot more animosity filled than I thought it would be at this point in his career. But I don't know about like in the media circle, but on the news that we watch intermittently, him talking to that female reporter at the airport was the most like you would have thought that he berated her in front of like her children at like a fucking playground or something like that. With how much hate he was getting for that. But my God, as someone who's a Virat stan and defended him like religiously for the last 5 years, we are running out of things to say to defend him here, which is hard.
Yeah. The difficult thing is that he looks okay when he gets in, but he still plays down that line. Or do you mean his antics, not his performance?
No, the
I
antics.
also, sorry, go on.
I think the antics are just a part of it. And I think this one, like the sandpaper thing where he does his pocket, I think that one
That was funny to me. To me, that was funny, especially because he's told the crowd to quieten down for Smith before. So I think that because of that, it's funny.
I think it is hilarious, but I also think
that was a comedian who realizes he hasn't written enough for a full hour.
That's exactly what I was saying. I was like, I don't think he does this if he's scoring.
Crowd work. What do you do?
Yeah. I mean, it did seem like a sort of last sort of ditch effort to, I think maybe ignite his team and like leave his mark or do something because he didn't really outside of the Perth match. He didn't bring a whole lot with his bat, and by a whole lot is probably generous. But I do think that he was short of confidence and needed something to get himself enthralled in the match. And again, I don't think he does that if he's scoring runs or if India's in a point of command.
I think also that was Australia had just started to put a little bit of a partnership together at a point where India were down a Bumrah. They needed something. That was just the sort of thing that a captain trying to think out of the box might do it when desperately trying to kind of get the crowd on side and egg his team on to pull out one last final miracle. It's there haven't been many funny sandpaper jokes ever. I got quite bored of that quite quickly at the time. Maybe it's a fun little callback if you do it every couple of years. It's absolutely the kind of thing Stuart Broad would have done at some point.
Knuckle, can I interrupt you there? Karan, I saw some clips. I'm not sure if it was the MCG, somewhere else. I think there was a bit of banter. Indian guy waving sandpaper, Australian saying, have you got a visa? Or something like that.
Yeah, that happened. That happened at the second match and our match. And our match, the guy with the sandpaper got kicked out. The MCG staff was all over the place in terms of what they allowed and what they didn't. That was a little bit odd. Like I said, Bay 13th got away with everything, and then this guy was just running around them with sandpaper, and there was like 6 security guards on him within 30 seconds, and escorted him out of the ground.
That's wild.
Do you have a visa? Like, there's always one guy who takes the prank too far.
Yeah,
there's always one guy who like suggests, set fire to their car. It's like, dude, chill.
It's like Winston from New Girl.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nico, you were making a point before.
Yeah, the Kohli cam industry will try and keep itself going as long as humanly possible, even though they perhaps because they know they might not have too much more Virat left. That was almost certainly Virat Kohli's last Test match in Australia. I mean, unless this plan of 2-tier Test cricket and England and Australia playing each other post 2027 happens in time to keep him going. We'll talk about that another time, perhaps. But yeah, I think the noises of disappointed horse will tell you where we stand on that you just heard.
Was that why it sounded like? Fair enough.
Yeah. Why the long face? It's again the same comedian as earlier. Really running out of stuff. Yeah, but by that point it was a little bit desperate for India. You're watching because you've seen funny stuff happen. Really, by that point, and you've probably only got another hour before you can go back to bed or before you can get on with your day. Really, by that point. But I mean, if we look kind of broader, Kohli was not the only top order batter on either side who struggled. This is one of the toughest series for top order batters ever. It's the lowest average for overall for a 3 or more match series in Australia for nearly 30 years. It was the top order batters didn't really get much at all out of it. In fact, looking at the 6 to 10 averaged almost as much as 1 to 5 across the course of the series for both sides. And you look at really India never, apart from in the second innings at Perth, got any sort of start from their top order. Jaiswal, very boom or bust. KL Rahul started the series very well and kind of faded a little bit. Rohit Sharma just had one of those disastrous series that happens when it happens for a player this advanced in his career, it starts making people think about. At the end, he essentially had to leave himself out. Shubman Gill looked good in patches, but it was a very Shubman Gill series. And Virat Kohli, again, as discussed, really nothing apart from that second innings in Perth. And it's, people criticize Rishabh Pant because people love to criticize Rishabh Pant, but consistently coming in when the ball is new and hard is not an ideal usage of Rishabh Pant, really. It's not an ideal entry point to use the lexicon of top order batters, and so of T20 analysts, and so it's very difficult to win a series when your top order is so consistently malfunctioning. Australia's was a little bit better. Maybe Usman Khawaja managed to bat a little bit longer at times. Sam Constas clearly made a difference, but Marnus Labuschagne grew into the series as the series went on. Stephen Smith played a couple of vintage Stephen Smith innings. A couple of them quite scratchy to begin with, but he put the kind of big runs together that we haven't seen from him for a while, and him moving himself back down from the opening position clearly worked. And that eventually gave a bit of cover for the likes of Travis Head, for Alex Carey, who I thought had an excellent series with the bat as well. And then if you look at the other kind of big sort of cricketing difference between the two sides, I was looking through some stats articles. Bumrah and Siraj, between them, bowled nearly half of India's overs across the Test series, which is wild. Bumrah took 40% of yeah, for sure. Bumrah took 40% of India's wickets across the course of the series. Mohammad Siraj another quarter, and the next best for India in terms of percentages is Prasidh Krishna, who took 7.5% of India's wickets after playing one game. Whereas you set that against previous series where you've always had, India had a lot of injuries as is well established during the last series in Australia, but they were always able to come up with someone who was
well in this series.
They had a bigger pool to call on. You had at different times during that series. You had Bumrah, you had Shami, you had Siraj, you had Umesh Yadav. I can't remember if Ishant made it to that tour, but certainly the tour before. I don't think so. Navdeep Saini briefly, even Natarajan, and
the Lord was there as well,
and Lord Thakur. For sure. And you also had the spinners putting the weight. I was looking through the contributions of the spinners. So in 2018-19, India's spinners took 20 wickets at 29. 2020-21, they took 23 wickets at 27. This series, 8 wickets at 48 for the series. Bowled way down in terms of the numbers of overs. And so you ended up with a situation where captains didn't trust their spinners to take wickets or keep the runs down.
Even Lyon didn't bowl much, did he?
Not as much as he has in previous series. Although I'm looking at for Australia. Yeah, he didn't bowl as many overs. But the spinners, 11 wickets at 35. A couple of those are Travis Head. But still, Lyon still bowled 20% or 19% of Australia's overs for the for the series. He did his job to an extent. He did the job that he was allowed to do, and he was very important at certain times. For all sorts of reasons, it wasn't a test for the spinners, but you ended up with a situation where India didn't trust the spinners despite picking. When they didn't trust Ashwin to the point they didn't pick him. He actually bowled very well in Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really seem to trust Jadeja and Washington Sundar to do a serious amount of bowling. Didn't trust Nitish Kumar Reddy. So that's your three, basically, that's your all-rounders essentially taken out of the equation as bowlers. And then you're left with three fast bowlers, which for most of the series was two fast bowlers. And for some of the series was one fast bowler. By contrast, Australia were happy to throw the ball to line whenever they needed to. Mitchell Marsh wasn't able to bowl much, but they got little bits out of Head and Labuschagne.
But that's the one thing they did complain about, was they complained about Marsh not bowling. But even then, like you said, they had enough of other people doing it.
And then it was a genuine three-pronged pace attack. Cummins wasn't at his best in the first test. I thought Mitch Stark bowled beautifully. I thought Hazelwood bowled really well up until the point that he got injured, and then Boland is Boland yard. So the drop off between the new ball and the first change was pretty minimal for Australia, if at all, and for India it was huge.
It was almost like India having Shami fit. Shami, Siraj, and Bumrah. That works. That has worked.
I mean, generally having three good fast bowlers is better than having two or better than having one, and also having picking spinners who you trust to bowl whether they're taking wickets or not, and being able to take wickets when circumstances are in their favour is helpful. Yes, it is generally better to have more to have an attack rather than one bowler and everyone else trying to help out
and quality as
desperately. Well. Yeah, for sure. And I do think the spinner issue it put even more pressure on Bumrah than was already there. But it's very difficult to then win a series when your top order isn't functioning and your bowling is so heavily reliant on your first choice bowler. There's not many parts of the team left then to stand out. There really, if you look at the whole of the series, there's not really a part of a team that you can say consistently functioned better than Australia's if you look at the units of the team, with the exception of Bumrah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to come on to Bumrah in just a second. There was something I wanted to ask you guys. There's probably one department that India did do better, and that's just bantering everyone. But look, we never seen Kohli as captain again for a bit, and we saw that little bit of energy in the fourth test, right? That was given, which I think has been missing under Rohit. I mean, how did that make you feel? Let's ask an emotional question. Karan. Seeing Virat up and at him, should we say, as the Aussies like to say.
Yeah, I mean...
Did it make you feel like, Rohit's missing this?
Yeah, I think more than Rohit in this circumstance, I think this is like a top-down issue. Team management was terrible. I think the team selection was ridiculous. To bring in Gigi to be like, all right, I'm not going to decide if Rohit's going to play or not until I see the pitch. And he sees a fucking field of grass. And then he's like, all right, let me bring in Washi and Jaddu. And Washi's only overs bowled in the match or the last over the match. And Jaddu will bowl like 5 overs in the second innings. I think Virat, I think we lose that match by 9 wickets if Rohit's captain. I think there's a little bit where Virat gets the team to believe and gets them to bowl a little bit harder and quicker and more focused than they would otherwise. But also to an extent where I think he riles them up and gets them so impassioned, where we have that fucking 35 runs in the first 3 overs of the innings, where they're trying to bowl their hearts out. And I can see Virat being like, let's get 3 in the first 3 and really get on them. And then that's when you sort of overexert yourself and try too hard, which I think is like the potential, if any, detriment to sort of Virat's personality. But yeah, I think if it wasn't, I think team management just sort of put the whole team behind the 8 ball. I think Bumrah batted or bowled every single day of the series. which I mean, it's just not sustainable for this. And then we talk about like how I think this sort of resounding idea that Bumrah saved India has been a thing in a lot of formats for a long time, where our batting is relatively underwhelmed. And Bumrah, I think if it wasn't for Bumrah, the T20 World Cup doesn't happen because our batting underperformed, and he just sort of did what he had to do against like Pakistan and USA, and like towards in the finals and stuff like that, South Africa. But yeah, I mean, seeing Virat as captain is always going to make me happy. I don't like the way Rohit's been captain, just in terms of personality. I like the more fiery people. I think that's better for a country such as India, where they're just notoriously and historically more timid.
It's good to have an Australian mindset captain, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
I mean, Rohit went full Captain Grumpy at Yashasvi Jaiswal a few times in Melbourne after he started dropping
he did
catches.
drop 3 catches, right? I mean, that's probably where
the Marnus drop was killer.
But you know, Rohit Sharma certainly got emotional then. Maybe he misplaced it but he certainly there was no sense of timidity or anything there. These are the kind of things that get picked up when a team is losing.
That's not to say that he's timid or doesn't care. That's not the point. I mean, look, India's probably most successful captain, and certainly in terms of ICC tournaments, is famed for being Mr. Cool, Dhoni. So it's not. I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't want to conflate being quiet with not caring. But I think it's more about it's about tactical nous. I think like there was just an energy and an edge, even with Bumrah as the captain, that felt different. It felt different basically when it was somebody other than Rohit.
I think it's engaged and attacking. It's like if you look at the way that Virat captained India against England in England, where for the last 8th and 9th wicket we had 10 players breathing down the throats of Jimmy Anderson at crease. And then you look at the field placement for that line and Boland partnership that sort of swung the match back in Australia's favor at the MCG. We've got 5 people on the boundary and 4 people just outside or inside the circle, where we're trying to stop runs and prevent like the odd boundary instead of trying to get wickets. And I think that's sort of the difference, where Virat will try to force the mistake and Rohit is happy to wait for the mistake to happen.
That is kind of a global trend, though, that teams have started to try and put players back, either to put teams back in the boundary to farm the strike or to try and farm the strike, which a lot of teams do. So I don't think that's entirely a Rohit Sharma problem. It should also be pointed out that during Virat Kohli's captaincy, India weren't great at dismissing tails. I think a lot of that is due to the bowlers. You know, Virat Kohli got the. You know, Bumrah is probably a better bowler, an even better bowler now than he was towards the end of Virat Kohli's captaincy. So, you know, Bumrah is obviously a huge weapon against the tail. I was quite interested actually to see what Australia did with India's tail. Is that they had a full slip cordon and then fielders out, which I thought was quite an interesting and welcome development. So I think that is a slightly bigger point in terms of Australia have this reputation that they like to go hard at the captain. They want to knock the captain out of the series and as a result demoralize the team. Now, some of that I think is over mythologized, and I think in general, if you're getting the opposition's best players out early, it doesn't matter whether they're captain or not. And ultimately, as we've been saying, a team with a malfunctioning top order and heavily reliant on one bowler is going to struggle whoever is captain. It just became the perfect storm for Rohit Sharma, where he isn't able to score runs in the middle order, isn't able to score runs in the top order, catches are going down, his bowlers aren't doing what he wants them to do. He changes a plan, the batters adapt and score runs. Batters get through tough times. You know, the amount of times that Akash Deep could have had wickets early in his spell in the 3rd and 4th test and didn't. You know, if he's even slightly luckier, things maybe go a little differently. But those are the kind of things that don't go your way when you're having a bad series.
In defense of Rohit, I will say
you get this microscope on your on-field conduct and your facial expressions and your your personality, as it were. We can talk about this probably in the past tense now. I think it looks pretty likely that Rohit Sharma has played his last test and captained his last test. And I think overall he has been a decent test captain for India. I think he has been part of creating an environment where new players have come in and felt comfortable in the team and have showed that in their performances. I don't think he has been an outstanding captain. I think he has had significant flaws as a captain, as all captains do. But I think that we will look back on his tenure as being decent, nothing more, nothing less.
Well, I mean, look, I was going to say in defense of him, it's not like he doesn't know how to win. Just to take the IPL alone, he's won it a few times as a captain. Obviously now a T20 World Cup winner as well, and got to the 50 over final and a few bits and bobs. I think it might just be a timing thing as well. Look, he's just had a kid, and who knows what distractions there are. The fact that he feels far away or whatever else. The issue for me, it's not just Australia. It felt similar. It felt similar in the New Zealand series, and it feels like that last Bangladesh match where he came out just smacking it silly, where India basically made scored ridiculously quickly. It feels like he just maybe used up all his juju then. He just all the energy he had to captain, and it was like kind of just.
I mean, it is interesting because he both captained and batted really well in the series against England earlier in the year and in that Bangladesh series. That was a tactical masterclass that he was able to pull off like not many other batters can.
And he is one of the best players ever.
He showed that killer gear that he has a few times. So I think some of this is, and that wasn't that long ago, but time has caught up to him. Let's go with that. I don't know exactly what it is, but time and technique and circumstances have caught up to him in a way that a guy at this point in his career, with the calendar as it is, probably can't recover from. And it's a shame because he made himself a really quality test opener, one of the best in the world for his period, from a guy who had barely opened ever in first-class cricket, and became a pretty decent captain despite not being a particularly outgoing personality. He'll be looked on as it'll be looked on as a disaster and a shambles, and it's not.
Which would be harsh.
As far as his career has gone. In terms of leadership, and Karen, I think you touched on this, looking higher, the fears around Gautam Gambhir and what an India team looks like under Gautam Gambhir where things aren't going right. He's done absolutely nothing to assuage those doubts at all. We're seeing stories that we don't normally see around, and it's partly because, frankly, a lot of Indian reporters don't really do their jobs very well, and they don't get the Indian media environment doesn't allow them to get close to the team, and they're not particularly interested in seemingly, or the Indian media landscape is not so interested in that kind of on the ground reporting as they are in some countries. But we get the stories about them not celebrating together after Perth, about players approaching journalists in kebab shops to intercede with the team management on their behalf. We get Gautam Gambhir appearing not to know how to do press conferences at various points, not appearing to realize that people would be listening to what he was saying and interpreting it accordingly, and that he should say things that actually mean something. And we get a sense of a team fighting and competing almost despite decisions not in front of them. I think selection is always easy to criticize after a defeat, but there's been a consistent defensive selection throughout this series. There's been a lot of picking players and teams to where you compromise strengths to cover weaknesses or perceived weaknesses. So never really picking, only picking Ashwin for one game, or not trying to pack the team with all rounders who aren't quite good enough to do those in those conditions in that form to do both of those roles, and then picking three of them at the same time and massively under bowling a lot of them. As a result, you ended up with a situation where it looked from the outside as though the on-field captain wasn't particularly happy with the resources at his disposal. Whether that's true or not, who knows? And Nitish Kumar Reddy will end up being a very fine cricketer, I'm sure, probably as a number 6 batter who doesn't bowl very much. We know Washington Sunder's a good cricketer. He wasn't really able to show that at any point during this series. Jadeja has been a magnificent cricketer. How long does he have left? He wasn't really a factor in this series with bat, ball, or even in the field.
He was a detriment with the bat. He was a problem with the bat. His batting was, outside of the one inning where he saved us, where
77 or something? Was that a different innings?
Yeah, there was one innings where he saved the draw. But other than that, he was a liability with the bat. He looked lost, wouldn't rotate strike, put the pressure on everyone else. Him outside of team management might have been one of my more frustrating characters.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say he was a liability. He was just a sort of non-factor, as far as I could tell.
But him not rotating strike, he put pressure on. When we lost 3 wickets in the second day here, he was on all 3 wickets, and they were like 30, 40 balls apart. And he was on 2 for every single time a new batter came in.
Yeah.
Stuff like that puts pressure on that.
I think there's a few things. I mean, just a few little micro things. Washington Sundar not farming more of the strike with the tail. But really, once you've got to that point, you are. I think that focusing too much on that would be allowing the top order to get off too easily. In the face, yes, of some outstanding bowling on some tricky pitches. That's not an issue. Cummins and Stark and Boland were brilliant, and the pitches were generally really entertaining. Apart from the last test, which I thought was the last test was very entertaining. It wasn't a good pitch; it was a fun pitch. It wasn't a good pitch.
If that kind of pitch was in India, you'd be getting a lot of complaints about it.
It was a bit much.
But it was fun. You're right. It was fun.
It was a bit much. I think generally through the rest of the series, the pitches were pretty good and made for some really, really good cricket. I would have loved to see the spinners play more of a part, and I think at times they probably could have played a bigger part. But when you've got significant parts of your team, and kind of as I've been saying throughout, when you've got significant parts of your team either underperforming or kind of reduced to a non-factor, you do have to look at it and wonder why. And it looked as though India were in their selections unclear about what they were trying to do, unclear about how they were going to try and do it, and unclear what their best strategy was to win games rather than sort of maintain a veneer of respectability. And that I was critical of India under Shastri for occasionally picking defensive selections, but that's one defensive selection. That's one defensive selection in a very, very good bowling attack. The Thakur over Ashwin thing. That is not the same as picking 3 all-rounders who, it turns out, aren't really trusted to do much of a job with the ball, and can get you out of a hole with the bat, but only so often.
I mean that's been a theme. The bowlers didn't bat well enough. The bowlers did not bat well enough. Boo.
Yeah, and then the confusion over where's Rohit batting and all of this stuff. I thought him coming back in the middle order was odd. I didn't think that made a great deal of sense at the time, because he's made himself into a top order batter. It's been a long time since he was a middle order batter. Probably the last tour of Australia was the last time he was a middle order batter.
Maybe he just
And
had a beer with Smith after the first test, and he's getting some notes. Who knows?
it was very. It smacked of confusion. The entire thing, and Shubman Gill being messed around as a result of it. Sarfraz Khan sitting on the bench throughout the whole thing. That one's a bit more defensible, perhaps, because how much difference would it have actually made? The only selection decision that you would say really worked was KL Rahul as an opener, who certainly for the first half of the series looked really accomplished, really solid, looked like he knew what he was trying to do throughout. I think that all of Akashdeep, Harshat Rana, and Prasidh Krishna had their moments, for sure. Akashdeep, I think, was phenomenally unlucky throughout the series. Harshat bowled real energy and hostility in the first Test match, and Prasidh finally showed what those of us who've been kind of hoping he would become a good Test bowler he finally showed what we've been talking about. He looked like a real Test bowler. Also Nitish Kumar Reddy, who was a bit of an odd surprise selection, has shown great promise with as a middle order batter. Not really at all with the with the ball. So there's a few sort of marginal selections there which you can say have worked, but a lot of that is talent ID. A lot of that probably goes further down than the head than the selectors and the head coaching staff. I think there is not a lot at the moment to recommend Gautam Gambhir for a future job. Put it that way.
But how much of it is? I mean, you mentioned the selectors. Look, Dravid lost his first series.
I mean, in terms of the selectors, I don't think there was that much wrong with the squad that was selected for this series. It was the squad you would select given the players available. Shami wasn't available, Kuldeep wasn't available. Those two would have been in the squad had they been fit. Really, there isn't really another selection choice in terms of the squad that you can make. The selector doesn't pick the 11.
No, sure. I think Shami was missed incredibly. Without that, with Shami, you don't need to play Bumrah all the time. There is obviously that
you don't need to bowl him all the time
as well. And Siraj can be number 3. He's not quite used to the role. I think.
I think Kuldeep would have made a huge difference. An actual wicket-taking spin bowler would have made a huge difference, particularly against the tail.
There's a concept: wicket-taking spin bowler, not just containment.
I miss Ashwin.
That's what it comes down to, doesn't it? Look, there is obviously that kind of what is it? A cliche, is an idiom of carrying the team on your back. Bumrah is probably one of the people I think is as close to doing it this time, and as I think screwed his back up as a result. Going forward, I think we're going to have to manage his not the three of us, but certainly the team are going to have to, or the management are going to have to manage his workload. He can't be bowling as much as he does now. So there's probably going to be a case for, hopefully Shami's back, and then they won't play every game together. Then you need someone else who can slot in. Who would that be then for you guys? Garan, I mean, which of the other fast bowlers, obviously aside from Siraj, because I think is a given that he'll be in there. Who else are you slotting in with, say, Shami and Siraj, or Bumrah and Siraj, for that rotation, especially with a look at kind of, I guess, transition, because some of the other boys are getting, Shami's getting old as well. So
probably Prasidh Krishna. I think that's just there's a reason they thought him on this tour.
The most like Ishant, probably, in terms of height anyway. I mean, his body's slightly different, but in terms of that height, like Ishant's been missing, right?
And the youth, and just sort of like, I think we're probably a year away from having a completely different team than we're looking at in this series. So yeah, I would imagine that to the top of my head, I would imagine that he's our next slotted in pace bowler, and he's exciting. I do like watching him bowl. He's got a really pretty motion and stuff like that. But yeah, he still seems like a long cry away from Shami and Bumrah. So I don't know if he can slot in and sort of win us matches as those two can. But I do think that off the top of my head that he's the next one up.
He needs to get a few more India A tours under his belt then. Maybe some county cricket. I don't think it's happening, especially if he's in the squad.
Well, I mean, India's next series is the England series, isn't it?
That's what I mean. If he's in the England squad, he probably won't play county. I'm guessing.
Well, it has happened before, where you've had touring sides, bowlers playing county cricket early in the season.
Pujara.
Is
about.
Oh, would have loved him.
That was the other story that came out I got about Gautam Gambhir, is that he apparently wanted Pujara to be recalled at some point. Really?
Yeah. Oh, did he really?
Really? The series.
He said that, and he's also actually been out of. I don't think he's been performing a great deal recently. Pujara has. Not to say that he couldn't have come good, because that's not he's been. Kind of fielded before that.
Let's bring back the team that won. Let's play them.
Yeah. The timing of that doesn't make any. Anyway, that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I wouldn't be that surprised if Prasidh Krishna got a couple of county games in before the start of around the start of that tour. I think you're going to take a fair few fast bowlers, 5 or 6 fast bowlers to England, all being well. Bumrah, Siraj, Shami, Akashdeep, Harshit Rana, and Prasidh Krishna. There's absolutely no reason why you couldn't take all 6 of them to England.
You would need, I think, a bit of rotation. That's providing Bumrah is dosing up on the turmeric latte, as we say.
We have England, no idea. We have no idea what that injury actually is. There were people speculating side strain. There were people speculating this and that. It's still we've still got 5 months.
Yep.
Until and
the IPL in between this, so there's going to be work.
Trophy.
And the Champions Trophy, which is in less than a month. Who knows what's gonna?
Yeah, isn't England also coming to India in like 2 weeks?
Yeah,
for ODI series, yes.
Yeah,
it's going to warm up for the Champions Trophy.
Our Champions Trophy warm up, yeah. Speaking of England, my mum texted me the other day that she had a dream where she was being chased by Jofra Archer.
I mean,
reports do not say at this point if Archer injured himself while chasing my mum in a dream. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if Prasidh or Siraj or someone did get a couple of county games. We could end up in a situation where the squad, barring Ashwin, barring potentially Rohit, because who knows what's going to happen, because who knows when that's going to be. It looks unlikely at this point that he plays another test. But I think that he will probably be the one to make that call. I don't know the guy, don't have any ins, don't know anyone in his camp and all of this stuff. Doesn't look as though Virat Kohli's lost any appetite for the fight in terms of his going. So the squad might end up being quite similar, barring injured players coming back like Shami and Kuldeep Yadav, who I really think should be selected for India more often, and I would not at all be averse to playing Kuldeep Yadav as your sole spinner. Particularly, you do actually trust Nitish Kumar Reddy as a seam bowling all rounder, even if he's only bowling a few overs. You certainly would trust Nitish Kumar Reddy as a number 7 batter, based on what we've seen so far. So there is that to consider. Harshit Rana can bat a bit as we've seen.
Akashdeep can hit some nice
Akashdeep.
sixes.
Yeah, Akashdeep as well. For sure. His one first class 50 came off like 18 balls or something.
And did he hit Cummins or Stark? Who did he tonk for that ridiculous six?
Yeah, he smashed Cummins for an absurd six, didn't he?
Yeah, it was like, wow.
Yeah. So India have a lot of fast bowlers to pick from, in terms of a squad, but it's about, can they keep two of Bumrah, Siraj, and Shami fit for every game?
And how well they can bat, because then if we can get rid of a few of the basically you need openers and a number 3 and a wicket keeper. Anyone else can be a fast bowler and a batter. Then you're all right.
I mean, the wicketkeeper is fine. Rishabh Pant.
No. What I mean is the wicketkeeper's not going to bowl, and probably the top.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah, everyone else can be a bowler and a batter, and just like you just keep rotating, and they can all hit runs. It'd be completely mental, but fantastically entertaining, maybe.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's going to be much difference to now, basically.
And England are exciting but flawed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think there's a lot. Also, our batters are so disappointing in this series. We keep on like, oh, Boomer did this, if Shami was fit, or Kuldeep, whatever. Shubnam was bad. He would get settled and just get out to bad balls.
It's difficult to score runs when your top order is consistently misfiring.
Yeah, I mean, look,
it's difficult to win games. Sorry, when you're it's difficult to win games when your top order is consistently misfiring. This is obvious.
Yeah, it's difficult in Australia more so over recent times that we've heard the Australian bats. I think Kwaja was talking about the Kookaburra ball making it harder. Anyway, and then when you're I mean, I think it's the reason we are not talking about it really is probably because we've discussed it so much. It's kind of a given that the Indian top order is shit right now. And not doing what we expect. So we kind of like, look, we've come to terms with that.
Almost really that top order batting around the world is really hard right now. And that no one is really scoring many big runs at the top of the order.
Yes, but India is special and should be better.
Yeah, but I don't care about that.
I don't care about exactly that. Look at Harry Brook. Why can't you do what Harry Brook done?
He's number 5.
Indian dads at that point.
He's number 5. He's not a top order batter.
We just turn into Indian dads at this point. That's what it is.
Him and his logic. Irrational.
Bloody logic.
Listen, fine. Sarfaraz Khan will score 100 at Lords, and we'll all be happy.
That'll be hilarious.
That'd be fucking great. And so will Virat. Virat. Do you think England's his last series?
I think he's got probably another series after that.
If he wants it to be.
Yeah.
Sure. Which I'm a big believer of. I think he's earned the right to leave on his own accord, regardless if he drags the team down with him. But it seems like he seems a lot more animatedly upset with his wickets than I've remembered him in a minute.
And he went straight to the nets, didn't he, the other day?
Yeah, and it's to the point where it's embarrassing. Scott Boland said exactly what they're going to do, what they've been doing, how it's been working before the second innings here at the SCG. And they just did the exact same thing again, and he got out the exact same way again. At that point, it's like what's her name? Simone Biles just like pulled out of the Olympics at the last second because she got the yips. It looks like Virat just has the yips to any ball in the fifth stump. He'll leave the first 3, and then he's like, all right, well, the fourth one I'm going to get. Sort of like when you give Rishabh 4 dot balls in a row, through hell and high water, he's swinging on that fifth one. And just like if you bowled a fifth stump line to Virat, he's inevitably going to push and jab at it. I don't remember the last time he didn't get out like that.
Didn't he? I'm trying to think. Wasn't there a run out? I'm just being facetious more than anything else.
Probably. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. No, you're right, and it's beyond a meme. KK brought it up last time where we've seen that picture of like a 12 stumps and he's still flashing at it. And it's funny because it's true, unfortunately, and it's also quite sad.
So sad, man.
Yeah.
Most batters get out most of the time in that channel outside of stump caught in the cordon. That's how most dismissals fall in Test cricket.
Like, God forbid an inside edge onto the stumps.
Well, he's had that too. He's had that too every now and again. Not this time.
He also had a catch that wasn't a catch, which was good. And we were split on this in the group about whether it was or it wasn't.
That was out.
No, the Steve Smith one?
That was out. Let's not go there again.
Where it rolled to him and then he basically rolled it to Marnus? Give me a breakdown on this.
So go on.
the Jaiswal and the Akashdeep one at the end of the MCG where it was like Snicko and all that, obviously right calls. Like that one, it's easy for me to like bitch and moan about it because A, I'm good at bitching and moaning, and then B, I blindly defend our guys through right or wrong. But the catch one that rolled on the ground, and I think the rule is like if he's got control of it and it hits the ground, then it's not a big deal. But if he had control of it, he would have held on to it himself instead of throwing an oop up there to Marnus.
He's falling. He's falling. But look, the reason I said that I was obviously hoping it wasn't, and maybe I was trying to what's the word? Put the voodoo on it or the nazar or whatever by saying it's going to be out. But I've seen videos, demonstrations, and I'm pretty sure it's Atherton and the same have done these where they're showing like the grass.
Mark
yeah,
did that on UK TV about 20 years ago, where the ball will look like it's hit the ground. I can't really do it here. Here, where it'll look like it's hit the ground, but then from side on, it's quite clearly in the hand.
It's about the camera.
It's basically about the camera angle. It's about the one from front on, like mapping a 3D image onto 2D and foreshortening it. It's called anyway. It didn't matter because there's a kind of Greek tragic inevitability to Kohli being drawn to that.
I do think though, if he gets out first ball in that second innings, I think that might expedite his retirement a little bit. I think there's a difference between getting out for a duck and a golden duck, or getting 15 and a golden duck. I think that could have been catastrophic.
It would have expedited my sleep that night because I stayed awake because he didn't get out and he carried on.
yeah, fair enough. There were people that at MCG Day 5 behind us that as soon as Virat got out, there's like 20 people that just left. They're like, we didn't care who won. We just came for Virat.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What about Bess Avasul? Like, you paid good money to, you might as well watch the rest of the game.
And Day 5 is cheap.
Yeah, Day 5 is £10.
You probably bought your own gibber anyway, so and your own snacks. yeah. I've been to games here where someone's passing around a big tub of
but when
it was
if you're relying on Virat innings right now, how many snacks are you really bringing? You're like, I need to keep myself occupied for an hour.
Unfortunately, so we do need a whole. Oh, you talk about an hour. We do need an episode on Bumrah on his own. I think we're not going to do him justice here. I think he kind of deserves it. Highest wicket taker against Australia, I think, beating Bisham Singh Bedi. I think is if not the second, definitely the highest.
For an Indian in Australia, yes.
Yeah, for an Indian.
Most wickets for an Indian in a series in Australia. There's all sorts of stats. He's basically ended Nathan McSweeney's Test career almost before it
which
started.
Was harsh.
Is probably the best way of summing it up. Jasprit Bumrah, 32 wickets at 13. All of India's other bowlers combined, 48 wickets at 37.
That's so gross.
I'm so shocked I've just smacked my head against a brick wall. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
But yeah. Wow, that's actually to do with the foreshortening because I thought that was further away because I'm looking at the screen.
and the best average for any bowler with 200 plus Test wickets.
It's insane.
He was comically good.
I also think he had more first innings run than Virat in this series.
And when we were talking last time about how he's up there with people who were in black and white or some shit, they're like 100 years ago or something before the war.
Yeah, so you look at just ratio between his average and the average of his teammates. So he took his average was 2.84 times better than his teammates. The next one above him, for a decent cutoff, is George Lohman in the 1890s. There's a few more. There's a few more recent ones. There's Imran Khan.
And also his averages as well, right? His averages were I think it was
that's what it was. It's his average is a certain factor better than all of his teammates, and on that calculation, the next one above him is George Lohman in the 1890s. There's also the Imran Khan in 1982, where he was.
I know. I'm talking about
statistically.
I know the stat you're talking about now, but there was a different one we spoke about as well.
Side note: how does this affect sort of the IPL? Because I was just thinking about this with if Bumrah's Test captain, Rohit's ODI captain, Sky is T20 captain, and they're all under Hardik's captain tutelage.
It means Hardik is the Giga Chad. He's the captain of captains. Hardik is the man.
I didn't realize that they all play for Mumbai and they're all captain and they're a fourth player.
he also has the most swag as well. I think probably out of the entire white ball setup,
Yeah,
comes
probably.
with Bandia. So yeah, he's the captain of captains.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about the IPL. That was a string of thought.
I mean, look, it is an interesting one, certainly with the IPL, because now that India have lost 2 series in Test cricket, I rescind my previous statement that Test cricket is the best, and now IPL is the best.
Yeah, Test cricket sucks.
Yeah. Until June, we will support Keshav Maharaj. He's our boy. Although a few years ago, I met a South African guy. Well, no, I met a guy called Pillai, and I said, you're Tamil. And he went, we're all South African now. I was like, that's a very nice answer, but are you Tamil or not? Answer my question, Pillai.
All right, just to put it into historical context, the last member of Keshav Maharaj's great grandfather was brought to South Africa as an indentured labourer. So we are somewhat removed. But nevertheless, there will be a corner of Lords that is very much Durban South African Indians for those few days in June.
It will be a fun day to watch.
Yeah. No, I once had to describe Durban to Delhi to South Africa. And I said it's like Durban with less Indians, and she said, "No, come on, you're joking." Yes, look, I think there is probably a great episode we can do in the future about Caribbean cricket and South African cricket, and Indians therein. Because I mean, there's obviously historical reasons. Those are the kind of first settled Indian areas. Robin Singh, probably I think the only guy, probably I'm not sure born outside of India, but certainly born in the Caribbean. I think he's born in Trinidad, who played for India in Tests, I believe. I think that's a stat I heard somewhere. Robin Singh was, I guess you could say, a decent player, but a great coach because I think he was involved in winning some stuff. So that's cool. Anyway, that's the end of my soliloquy about random indentured laboured countries and their players. Although, you know what? So while we're going down memory lane, that culture still kind of pervades. I remember when Ram Rishawan was in the first few IPLs was there, and he's sitting on the bench because he wasn't really getting a game. And the commentators would talk to players on the bench, and he was talking about how, I've had a good time in India. I've got a sari for my sister's wedding. She's getting married soon. And that seemed to be the highlight of it.
Yep.
It was quite funny.
Yeah. There's a story. An Indian reporter asked Keshav Maharaj, "Your name's Keshav Maharaj. Why don't you speak Hindi?" Keshav Maharaj is like, "Well, we have 11 official languages in South Africa, and Hindi's not one of them." But why don't you speak Hindi? He says, "Look, my great grandfather was the last one to live in India, so I'm a bit far down the family tree."
And to be fair, I think I have seen him in a lungi or something. There's a photo of him somewhere. And also, that's also kind of, if we want to talk about it, that's kind of why chutney music exists. Because the people in Trinidad and Guyana have kept the melodies but lost the language, and hence we have English songs with Indian melodies. Chutney soca.
And that's why roti is such a big part of West Indian culture.
Yeah. And why they use the word ganja for describing that, bizarrely, as well. Guys, just to mention resting captains and the like, we will on the next episode talk a little bit about Ireland's ODI tour of India, which is set to begin this Friday, the 10th. Harmanpreet and Renegar have been rested for it. I think they've been rested as opposed to opting to rest. But that's what it is. A certain Smriti Mandana is going to lead the team. So we'll mention that next time. I think we can have a little review about that. Give us some cricket to watch, and also something that probably India are going to win.
Good grief, she batted well against the West Indies.
Really?
Oh my lord, it was absurd.
I was joking. She bats. I think that's my prejudiced view of her, that she bats brilliantly all the time anyway. But yes, that's probably a good place for us to start next time as well. Actually, have you got any stats on that Windies performance for her? Just since you've mentioned how brilliantly she batted.
I don't know off the top of my head, but she and so India found a new one-day international opening partnership with Smriti Mandana after Shafali Verma has been sort of left out now, seemingly, which is a little bit of a shame. obviously. But she and her new opening partner Pratika Rao will put on consecutive 100 opening partnerships. I should say in that series, which India won incredibly handily. Obviously, won that first. You might remember they won that first game by 211 runs, which was one of the biggest winning margins that India have ever pulled off. Smriti Mandhana broke the record for most runs by a women's cricketer in a calendar year, and she did that with about a month to go. India women, despite confusing selection and baffling tactics, still very, very good.
Well, someone is. The England series for the men's, 22nd Jan, first T20, 25th Jan, second T20, both night games, presumably to meet the English audience, and third T20 also. And actually, hold on, I thought there was some ODIs. There are. Third one is on the 28th, fourth one on the 31st, then we're into Feb for the 5th, and then the ODI series, 3 matches is they're all in February, basically, 6th, 9th, and the 12th.
Yeah. Rumours that Shami might come back for that. Rumours of Bumrah being rested for it. Rumours of Kohli and Rohit both being in that team. These are all rumours at this stage. We will obviously react to that squad as and when it gets announced.
I think Bumrah being rested is a given for at least for the T20s. I guess if he's going to play in the Champions Trophy, they may need to bring him back for at least one of the last ODIs. And is this? Apart from the Sri Lanka situation, I think this is the first proper ODI series that Gigi will have, right?
Certainly with a full strength squad, yes. And you would imagine that squad will basically be the Champions Trophy squad.
Yeah. That's the whole point of it. So, it should be.
Yeah, could well see Prasidh Krishna, who's done very, very well in one-day cricket, in that squad. Interesting to see who they go with as the spinner. It has been Washington at times. Could be Yuzur Chahal because I think Kuldeep is still injured. Obviously Surya Kumar and Hardik Pandya and maybe Abhishek Sharma, having done so well in T20 cricket, but there's obviously a huge glut of really high quality players there as well. Shubman Gill and potentially at the top of the order, Tilak Varma as well. He's been doing very well in these sort of shadow white ball teams over the last few years. While players have been injured, Sanju Samson, who's done very, very well in those tours, maybe see he can force a way into that Champions Trophy team. But obviously, we'll react to all of that when we have something more concrete to react to,
or when we have the energy to do it after being so deflated. Oh. No, but seriously, guys, this series was long, and we've actually been through 3 test match series. Obviously, we call this on the. I think Knuckle, you said this as well. I think your exact phrase was something along the lines of how ridiculous it is the amount of cricket that India have to play before the end of the new year. And this, I think, was on our first episode right back in September. And there was a lot. I'm tired, and I haven't even played a game.
Yeah, there was the Bangladesh series, the New Zealand series, and the Australia series for India's men. That's just in Test cricket. So that's
in 3 months.
So that's what 10 tests in 3 months? No, more than that. 13 tests in 3 months.
No, it was 2 against
11. Was it 2 against Bangladesh?
Yeah, so it's
10 tests in 3 months.
Plus the what do you call it, tour games as well.
Yep, tour games. India women playing 2 full series of ODIs and T20s. You had 2 or 3 separate white ball series as well in there, plus the IPL auction.
Yeah. And Diwali, so it was a busy time. There's a lot going on.
And Jay Shah G, Coronation G.
Oh yeah, talking of which, there's some new homies apparently about to take over the BCCI. Maybe we can talk about them, because I don't know who they are, I'll be honest. I don't tend not to follow cricket administrators as much as I follow like the players themselves. It's just call me a loser for that, but it is what it is. Karan, any hopes from the ICC now, or do you feel let down that Jay Shah couldn't manufacture a series win down under?
Yeah, I mean, I was overall disappointed with our control over the DRS system. Typically, that's something that we should control and have final say on. Obviously, underwhelmed with the lack of spin usage. There weren't probably enough Indian umpires in the series. We could have probably used one upstairs at some point. Yeah, so is that a big concern of mine that Jay Shaw's losing his fastball? Maybe. But yeah, I can imagine that guy hates being embarrassed and hates losing.
Yeah.
And so I think if anyone's like the most upset about this, I could very well see it being him. And I mean, yeah, he's about to ruin Test cricket just so India has a more quicker chance to sort of redeem themselves if situations like this happen. And he's willing to ruin the format of the game for it.
You think? I think it'd be easier if India just didn't play Australia and England and just we were in the second division playing everyone else. They'd be through to the final, no problem. They make no money, which is the big problem in this. But
I think we like playing the big dogs. I just think we like beating the big dogs. And so when we lose, we just need to, all right, well, it's a good thing we play them again in a month. Sort of.
Yeah, right, yeah. But we still wait for the return fixture. It's like the World Series.
Yeah, exactly.
Any kind of American sport.
If we're struggling to distinguish series now.
Yeah. When he said that Ireland series, I like panicked and looked up cricket and I was like, there's no chance. I just saw us, we were playing in 22nd. But I didn't doubt it. I was like, I must have just missed the series.
Yeah. No, I was reading off a website because it's too much actually a little bit. We will delve into the machinations of the ICC. I think the World Test Championship and that madness. It is slightly grating that South Africa basically played no games but got through, but their financials are in a bit of a state, which is actually an indictment of the system, not their board as such. So, yeah,
by the way,
there will be a whole episode on that.
You know what else is happening in India this year? India are hosting the Women's ODI World Cup this year.
Hey.
In August and September.
That's exciting.
Are Pakistan coming?
That's.
I mean, it's partially a rhetorical question, to be honest. We'll deal with that in a future episode. Who knows?
They'll find out after we do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
After the first match.
Well, the only issue is there's a bit of a shit show to deal with in Dubai for the Champions Trophy first, which will be fun. Win the toss, win the game. Right, gents, should we leave it there? Especially as it's early morning for you, Karan. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Kumble Corner, the Indian Cricket Show. Make sure you like and subscribe to this episode, to the show, wherever you get this, either on Spotify or any podcast platform or YouTube. And we'll see you next time. Bye.